children, welcome back to our chemistry class, lesson 4, structure of atom. In the previous chemistry class, you learned what are atoms, which are the different particles in the atom, various models of atoms like plum pudding model, nuclear model proposed by Rutherford, etc. Today, we are going to some more important portions like Bohr's atom model, electronic configuration, Bohr-Berry rule, valency, atomic number and mass number, and isotopes and isobars. These are very important topics because these are the basis of your +1 chemistry class. So, when you watch this video, if you feel any difficulty, you can write these doubts in your notebook. We can clarify these doubts when you are in online discussion classes. Okay, let's move on to the topic. Today, I start with Bohr's atom model. Before starting, let me ask you a question. What is Rutherford's atom model? What was its drawback? I hope all of you know that. Anyway, I'll tell you what are the major conclusions of Rutherford's atom model and its drawback. According to Rutherford, after his experiment, he concluded that an atom has a positively charged center called nucleus. Total mass of the atom is completely concentrated in the nucleus. This was his conclusion. And second, he said that electrons are revolving around the nucleus in certain circular orbits. Also, he said the size of the nucleus is very small as compared to the size of the atom. This was the points proposed by Rutherford about atom. But even though this was almost acceptable, this model has some drawbacks. What was the drawback? Do you remember that? Yes. As we know, all the charged particles, if they are rotating around a particular object, gains acceleration gradually. During this accelerated motion, they emit energy in some form. We know that electrons also are charged particles. During their revolution around the nucleus, these electrons also gain some acceleration and they emit energy in the form of radiation. As a result, finally, they end into the nucleus. If these electrons end at the nucleus, what happens to the atom? These atoms become unstable. But we know that electrons never end in the nucleus and atoms are highly stable. Actually, Rutherford could not explain why electrons never fall at the center and why atoms are stable. If atoms are not stable, we can't see these types of millions of materials around in the nature. But atoms are stable. This was the last topic. Today, now we start with Bohr's atom model. This is Niels Bohr, a well-known scientist. He got Nobel Prizes and many more prizes for his work at structure of atom. According to Niels Bohr, atom contains a center part called nucleus around which electrons are revolving. Also, he said that during their rotational motion, these particles do not emit energy or they do not gain energy. Let us see what are the important postulates of Niels Bohr. The first point proposed by Niels Bohr is an atom consists of a small, heavy and positively charged center called nucleus. What is his first suggestion? An atom consists of a small, heavy and positively charged nucleus in the center. Secondly, he said electrons in an atom revolve around the nucleus only in certain selected discrete orbits. Each of these orbits have their own energy. As a result, he called these orbits as energy levels or shells. Let us try to draw the structure of atom. Let's draw the structure of atom. What was the first point? An atom has a small, heavy and positively charged center called nucleus. Let's draw the nucleus. It's very heavy. It's very heavy, positive and very small as compared to the size of the atom. So, let it be the nucleus of the atom. Then, the second point was, it is positive in nature. Do you know why it is positive? Which particle gives positive charge to the nucleus? You know that we have electrons, protons and neutrons in the atom. Among these particles, protons are positively charged, electrons are negatively charged and neutrons are neutral particles. Among these particles, the positively charged particles are present inside the nucleus. So we can write proton. Protons are represented by small letter P. So we write P inside the nucleus. That's why nucleus have positive charge. Now we go to the next point. The nucleus is heavy in nature. Which particles give mass to the atom? Is it electrons? We know that in the beginning we studied that electrons have negligibly small mass. The total mass of the atom is given by protons and neutrons. So, in addition to protons, one more important subatomic particle is present in the nucleus. It is neutron. We can write neutron. So, the first point is over. An atom has very small, positively charged and massive center. Then what was the second point? Around this nucleus, electrons are revolving through certain circular paths. What are the other names of these circular paths? They are termed as energy levels or shells. Let's draw some energy levels. This is a circular path around the nucleus. Not only a single shell, it has many circular paths. Another circular path. Again another. There are many circular paths around a nucleus. This is called nucleus. And what are the names of these circular paths? Okay. So we have nucleus and various shells around the nucleus. Then there is a problem. How we can identify these shells? All are alike, all are circular in nature. How can we identify or locate an electron in a particular shell? If we don't know the name, how will you identify them? You know that you are present in class 9A, 9B or 9, any other divisions of 9th. How each of the student in each division is identified? By calling their names. Similarly, we can identify these shells by giving certain names or by giving certain numbers. We can give numbers to this shell. The shell which is closer to the nucleus is numbered as 1. Let us write the number here. What is this one? This one is the nucleus. This is the nucleus where protons and neutrons are present. The first shell, that means the shell which is closer to the nucleus is numbered as 1. The second shell is numbered as 2. What will be the number of the next shell? N is equal to 3. It continues. We have many more shells around the nucleus. So it continues. In addition to these numbers, we can give certain names or designations also. It starts from English alphabet K. So N value 1 is equal to shell K. N is equal to 1. is also known as K shell. Then the next shell is termed as L shell. The next shell is termed as L shell. The third one is termed as M. If there is fourth shell, what would be the number? What would be the designation? K, L, M, N. N would be the designation of the fourth shell. That also continues. So by giving numbers or these designations, we can easily identify these shells. These integers, they are also known as, generally they are known as quantum numbers. They are called quantum numbers. Quantum numbers are shells. The representation of shells 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And I told you in the second point of Bohr's postulate, it is said that each of these orbits have their own energy. As a result, the electrons present in these orbits also have their energy. The energy of each shell can be represented as E1, E2, E3, etc. E1, E2, E3, etc. These are the energies of first shell, second shell, third shell, etc. Now, if we consider the energies of these electrons, which electrons have lesser energy? Any idea? Is it from the electron in the K shell, or is it in the M shell, or in the outer shells? Which one may have less amount of energy? It is the electrons present in the K shell. What is the special nature of K shell? The K shell or the electrons present in the K shell are attracted strongly to the nucleus. We know that this nucleus have positive charge. Electrons have negative charge. So positive and negative charges attract. So the nucleus strongly bind the electrons present in the K shell. But as we move away from the nucleus, the attractive force between the nucleus and the electrons reduces. So the energy of the electrons increases. If there is no power of attraction, they will be very energetic. They always have a tendency to go outside. So the electrons present in the outermost shells are very high. We can represent electrons by using dots. These are electrons. These also are electrons. When we move away, the attractive force decreases. As the attractive force decreases, the electrons become more energetic. They have more energy and they have a tendency to go out. If more electrons are present in the M shell, they also have very high energy. That means the energy of the first shell or the energy of the electrons present in the first shell is less than the energy of the second shell, which is again less than energy of the third shell. It continues. Did you get the points? The first point is nucleus is very small, then positively charged and having high mass. Then second point, electrons rotate around the nucleus in certain discrete orbits. Then the next point is, as long as an electron remains in an orbit, it does not lose or gain energy. As long as, this is the bold prediction by Niels Bohr. This was the drawback of Rutherford. He couldn't say why electrons never emit energy. So he solved this problem by stating that as long as an electron remains in an orbit, it does not lose or gain energy. See this? Electrons are rotating around the nucleus. Suppose we are considering electron present in the K shell. This electron is rotating around. It is not static. It is always in a movement. It is rotating around the nucleus. During this rotation, this electron never give up energy or it never gain energy. It can continue in the same shell. But if we apply high amount of energy, these electrons absorb this energy. As a result, the energy of the electron, that is E1 increases. If the energy is increased, it cannot continue in the same shell. As a result, it jump up to the next higher energy level. For example, if by absorbing energy from other sources, if electron gets energy which is equal to E2, this electron will jump to the next shell. If we remove energy, that electron will jump down to the next lower energy level. If the electron present in the second shell loses its energy, what happens? It has energy equal to the electron present in the first shell. So this will radiate energy and come to the next lower energy level. But it's only in the extreme cases. At ordinary condition, these two cases never happen. The electrons remain in their own orbit. These are the important points of Bohr's atom model. Let's rewind the postulates of Bohr's atom model. The first point is an atom consists of a small, heavy and positively charged nucleus in the center. Then second one, electrons in an atom revolve around the nucleus only in certain selected discrete orbits. Each orbit is associated with a definite amount of energy and these are called energy levels or shells. These shells are numbered as 1, 2, 3, etc. or designated as KLMN, etc. The energy of the electron is minimum in the orbit nearer to the nucleus, that is in the K shell. If E1, E2, E3, etc. are energies of KLM, etc., then E1 is less than E2, which is less than E3. Then the last point is, as long as an electron remains in an orbit, it does not lose or gain energy. Did you get the picture of atom? Atom has a center part and around the center part we have various energy levels. Electrons are revolving around this energy level. I hope you all got a clear picture about the structure of atom. Now, can you compare this structure of atom with any familiar system or any familiar object in your daily life? Nucleus with many shells. Can you compare this structure with any familiar system? Anybody got idea? Yes, it is. The structure of atom is similar to our solar system. Who is at the center in the solar system? Sun. Sun acts as the nucleus. Around the nucleus we have many orbits through which planets are revolving. Can Earth jump into Venus orbit? It's not possible. Can Venus go to Jupiter's orbit? It's also not possible. Each one has its own path. Similarly, our electrons also have their own path. We can't move them into another shells. So we can compare this Bohr's atom model with our solar system. Any other familiar object in your life? Onion, big onion. It has many layers. The structure of atom also is same. Very many outer shells are present. After removing each shell, we reach at a center. That center part is nucleus. Now, the next problem. We said protons and neutrons are present in the nucleus. Electrons are arranged in various shells. The next problem is how these electrons are arranged. Are they randomly scattered everywhere? Or is there any particular arrangement? How you are arranged in your class? Randomly or any particular arrangement? Yes, You are arranged in your class according to your roll numbers, the roll number or your alphabetical order. Similarly, electrons also are arranged in the various shells by following certain rules. These rules are stated by Bohr-Berry. According to Bohr-Berry scheme, we can arrange different electrons in various shells. This arrangement is known as electronic configuration. What is electronic configuration? The arrangement of electrons in various energy levels of an atom is known as the electronic configuration of the atom. How this arrangement possible? This is completely governed by Bohr-Berry scheme. Let us see the important rules of Bohr-Berry scheme. The first point is the maximum number of electrons in any orbit is given by the formula 2n square. What is n? N is the number of shells. Then second one, electrons are not accommodated in a given shell unless the inner shells are filled. That means the arrangement or the filling of electrons in an atom is a step-by-step process. Then the third point is the maximum number of electrons that can be present in the outermost orbit is 8. These are the important rules in Bohr-Berry scheme. Neutrons and protons are fixed in the nucleus. So no problem with this subatomic particle. The problem is with the arrangement of electrons only. What was the first rule of Bohr-Berry scheme? The maximum number of electrons that can be present in an orbit is given by the formula 2n square. 2n square. The formula is 2n square, where n is the number of shells. So what is the value of n for K shell? N is equal to 1. For L shell, it is 2. M shell, 3. N shell has n value 4. Can you calculate the maximum number of electrons in this shells? You can calculate it in your notebook now. What is the value? K. 2 into 1 square. 2 into 1 square is equal to 2. What is the maximum number of electron in the second shell? It's given by 2 into 2 square. That's equal to, what is in your notebook? What is the value? 2 into 2 square is equal to 8. Then the maximum number of electrons in the third shell. 2 into 3 square is equal to 18. 2 into 3 square is equal to 18. Similarly, the fourth shell can accommodate maximum of 32 electrons. So whatever be the number of shells in an atom, we can calculate the maximum number of electrons in that shells by using the formula 2n square. Then what was the next rule? Is this clear? It's very easy to calculate. Then the second point is the electrons are filled in an atom in a step-by-step manner. Step-by-step manner. What does it mean? Does the electron move to the outer shell and then the nearest shell? Is it like that? Or the electrons are moving to the K shell? Which is correct? Step-by-step. Yes. The electrons are moving first to the first shell, because electrons are strongly attracted to the nucleus. So always electrons will give priority to the K shell. If an atom has 6 electrons, the first 2 electrons will always move to the K shell. Then the remaining 4 electrons will move to the second shell, that is L shell. If there is more and more electrons, they will move to the next higher energy levels. This is called step-by-step arrangement of electrons. Let's consider some examples. Consider an atom with 8 electrons. Do you know which element is having 8 electrons? the most important element in our life. It is oxygen. Oxygen atom has 8 electrons. Oxygen has 8 electrons. Do you know how these 8 electrons are arranged in the orbits? The first 2 electrons will move to the first shell. The next remaining electrons will move to the second shell. That is the step-by-step arrangement of these electrons. Let's draw the structure of oxygen. Its nucleus. Nucleus has protons and neutrons. Then the first shell. How many electrons can be present in the first shell? It is 2. 2 electrons. How many more electrons remain in oxygen? 6 more. Where is these 6 electrons present? Is it in K shell? No. It is present in the next shell, that is in the L shell. L shell has how many electrons? 6 electrons in the case of oxygen. This is the structure of oxygen. We can write its configuration as K has 2 electrons, L has 6 electrons. This is the electronic configuration of oxygen atom. Consider another example. We can consider the example sodium. Do you know how many electrons are present in sodium? It is 11. 11 electrons. Let's draw the atomic structure of sodium. Sodium has 11 protons and 12 neutrons. 11 protons and 12 neutrons. And around this nucleus we have shells. The first shell, K shell. The second shell, L shell. Third shell is M. Now, the arrangement of electrons. How many electrons in the first one? It is 2 electrons. Then, what is the capacity of the second shell? It is 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, by giving 10 electrons in these 2 shells, we completed the first shell and the second shell. Then remains one more electron. Where should this electron go? It will move to the third shell. That is, the last electron, the 11th electron will move to the third shell of the sodium atom. So we can write the electronic configuration of sodium as K shell has 2 electrons, L shell has 8 electrons and M shell has 1 electron. So 2, 8, 1 is the electronic configuration of sodium atom. What is the third rule of Bohr-Berry scheme? The maximum number of electrons that can be accommodated in the outermost orbit is 8. The maximum number is 8. Whatever be the capacity of the shell, the maximum number of electron in an outer shell is always 8. Let's consider some examples. We can start with carbon. Do you know how many electrons are present in carbon atom? It is 6. We can write the configuration of carbon as C is equal to 6 electrons. Its configuration is 2, 4. K shell has 2 electrons and L shell has 4 electrons. Consider another one, the most familiar element, oxygen. Oxygen has 8 electrons and its configuration is 2, 6. Then neon. Neon has 10 electrons. Configuration is 2, 8. The next element in the periodic table is sodium. Do you know how many electrons in sodium? Sodium has 11 electrons. What is the configuration of sodium? Can we give 2 9? No. By neon, the second shell has completed his electron accommodation. So, this sodium atom takes one more shell and its electron configuration is 281. The third shell is occupied with the 1 electron. Then consider another one, chlorine. Chlorine has 17 electrons. Its configuration is 287. Argon, another element. Argon has electronic configuration 288. That is, it has 18 electrons. Consider another one. Do you know which element comes next? It is potassium. Potassium has 19 electrons. What is the electronic configuration of potassium? 2, 8. What is the next one? We expect 9 electrons in the third shell. But do you remember Bohr-Berry rule? In Bohr-Berry rule, we have a postulate, we have a point that the maximum number of electrons that can be present in the outer shell is 8. So, this electronic configuration violates Bohr-Berry rule. So, we can change this electronic configuration as, this is a wrong configuration, and we can write as 288. And what happens to the remaining 1 electron? It goes to the next energy level. It takes one more shell. So potassium has electronic configuration 2, 8, 8 and 1. It completely follows Bohr-Berry rule. Consider one more example. Calcium. Calcium is the next element. It has 20 electrons. The expected configuration is 2, 8, 10. But as it violates Bohr-Berry rule, we can rewrite, we can change the electronic configuration as 2, 8, 8, 2. So this is the correct configuration of calcium. In order to follow the Bohr-Berry rule, we take one more shell for calcium also. So these are the electronic configurations of certain important elements. By this, I hope you all have got a clear picture of structure of atom and the arrangement of electrons in various shells. For arranging different electrons, we use Bohr-Berry rule. Now, let us rewind the topic. Postulates of Bohr's atom model. Atom consists of small, heavy, positively charged nucleus. Electrons revolve around the nucleus in certain discrete paths, which are known as energy levels or shells. They are designated as KLM and etc. or numbered as 1, 2, 3, etc. As long as electrons remain in an orbit, it does not lose or gain energy. That was the model of atom. After that, we moved to Bohr-Berry scheme, electronic configuration, arrangement of electrons in various shells. This is governed by Bohr-Berry rule, which has different laws, like maximum number of electron in an atom in a shell can be calculated by 2n square formula. Then electrons fill in different shells in a step-by-step manner, and the maximum number of electrons in the atom in the shell is 8. Outermost shell is 8. By this, we conclude the session. Before that, we have some questions. You have to write this question and its answers in your notebook. If you have doubts, we can clear it in our live classes, discussion classes. The first question is, write in detail how Niels Bohr explained the stability of atom. The second, if K and L shells of the atom of an element are full, then what would be the total number of electrons in the atom? If K and L shells are full, what would be the total number of electrons in the atom? It's very easy. Write its electronic configuration. By now, you can write the electronic configuration. So, watch the class carefully and note down the doubts in your book and clear your doubts in the live discussion classes. Let us conclude today, and you will get more assignments and questions in the upcoming videos. Thank you.